Hi class, so this is the study session for the brain. So I'm just going to go through kind of a quick rundown of the things that you need to know, and hopefully this is helpful. All right, so we're just going to take a look at the outside of the brain. All right, we're going to cut it in half yet. So this whole thing from about here on is called the cerebrum on top. All right, so there's a number of different lobes a part of this. Down here at this part we have the cerebellum, and then you get the spinal cord into the brain stem down here on this part. So this is the cerebellum. Down here, this little bell shape at the bottom, and then the cerebrum is this thing on top. All right. So there's a number of different cerebral hemispheres that you need to know. You have the frontal hemisphere, or frontal cerebral lobes, excuse me. So you have the frontal lobe right here, and this is kind of where the forehead would be. You have the parietal lobe right up top. You have the temporal lobe, so think of like your temple, and that's kind of on the sides of the brain, all right, so about right here. And then you have your occipital, and that is towards kind of the back where it meets the cerebellum, so that's where the occipital is. All right, and these are named actually for the bones of the skull. So this little white thing on top, you can kind of see if I can cut it a little bit. So this thing that I kind of just cut through right here, I don't know if you can kind of see that here, kind of cut through it. Let's see. That structure is called the dura mater, all right? So that's kind of the covering that kind of helps protect the brain, all right? So also, looking at the outside of the brain, you have a couple of different fissures that we're going to look at. So fissures are these giant grooves. So you have your longitudinal fissure, which kind of goes from, splits the cerebrum into two hemispheres. So this is the longitudinal. Then you also have your transverse fissure. That goes from right here. And that splits the cerebrum from the cerebellum. That's right there. All right. Now, when you look on top of the brain and to the cerebellum, so this kind of pops right off. Kind of nice how that works, right? You have these number of ridges, and you also have these grooves. So this is the space in between them. All right. So these ridges are what they call gyres, or convolutions, and then in between these little the bottoms, those are called sulci. All right. So there's a number of them all through, kind of scattered throughout the cerebrum. All right. So we're kind of going to flip it upside down. So we kind of took off our optic chiasma, but these things right here are things that eventually attach to your eyes. So optics, that's where you kind of get that name from. And this is your optic chiasma, and that's right here. All right, so that's this little dangly structure, and there would be two of them, but I kind of ripped off the dura mater there. So that's what that came off of. So that'll also kind of attach here as well. So your spinal cord, that is kind of comes in right here. All right, so this side right here, that's your spinal cord. So this is basically the cerebellum is not on top of this the spinal cord. So that's just kind of where the spinal cord is at that very tip, and this would go on into the animal. All right. You can also see the medulla oblongata right here, and then you also can see the pons as well. So that'll be right there. All right. So we're going to take a look at the inside. All right. So the rest we kind of have to split it open. So what we did is we took a scalpel and just kind of split this in two. So if you can kind of see. Let's see. So as we already kind of said, I'm going to use this half. We have the spinal cord, the medulla oblongata, and you get the pons kind of in here. All right. Then we're going to get to the hypothalamus, and your hypothalamus is kind of down here, and your thalamus is right about over here. All right, so the hypothalamus is a little below that. So your hypothalamus is kind of below, and together these kind of make up the limbic system. Then over here, there's kind of this little thing right here, kind of juts off from the thalamus. This is your pineal body. That's where your pineal gland is located. Then we're going to kind of talk about some ventricles. So ventricles are these openings in kind of the brain. So you have right here, this is your third ventricle right here. So you can kind of, by put some stress on it, you can kind of see how there's an opening there. And that's where that is. On top of that, there is a lateral ventricle right above it. It would be what they call us superior. In between these two is called fornix. So this is this little tab right here. So it's pretty small. Let's see if I can get it. So it's this thing right here that separates the third ventricle, which is below, the lateral ventricle, which is on top. Right here, you almost see this highlighted area. This is what they call the corpus callosum. This is where the two hemispheres of the cerebrum kind of meet, and that's where a lot of that connection happens and how the brains talk to basically one another, and they kind of communicate and exchange information. The cerebral cortex is goes up here as this thin layer of gray matter that kind of it's where a lot of the thinking kind of occurs, and this white matter in here is kind of where that information is exchanged and kind of transported to different parts of the brain. Lastly, but not least, we're going to talk about the cerebellum. So this is that structure behind here. This kind of controls a lot of your coordinating of body muscular activities, skeletal muscle activities. And this thing right here, this kind of looks like almost like a tree with different branches are coming off. So this is called the arbor vitae, which means tree of life. So we kind of can think about little branches kind of going off and branching in different parts. All right. So that's a little quick rundown on the showdown. So hope that helps. Good luck.